So, as I said, my name is Eric McGee. I am the Director of Marketing and Corporate Communications here at Education Dynamics. We've also got Matthew Garouge on the phone. Matthew is the CEO and co-founder of Awato. Awato is a pretty cool tool that helps students identify career paths and opportunities based on their interests, and I'll let Matt tell you a little bit more about that here just in a second. So Education Dynamics, many of you may know us. We are an enrollment management lead generation organization, specifically dedicated to higher education and really focused on post-traditional students. So we offer everything from market research, which you'll see some of our research documented here in this presentation, as well as we do enrollment management services, fee-for-service marketing, lead generation, and nurturing for those students. So we've got a lot of experience here working with students or prospective students who are considering going back to school in particular. And Matt, I'll let you introduce yourself and Awato real quick.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Matt. I'm one of the co-founders here at Awato, and just a brief background on Awato. We've been working with higher education institutions now for 4 years, particularly around engaging prospective students and enrolled students on what they'd like to do and how they can really determine their best career path based on what the school has to offer. And that's really what we focus on, and we generally are working with schools from all sizes all the way up to some of the largest schools in the country.
Great. So let's go ahead and get started here. First, let's kind of take a survey of where we are, both in terms of marketing and higher education, and the students that we are talking about here specifically today, who we want to reach with this. So modern marketing, we want to start with a conversation here because really in the past, marketing was advertising. They would generate a lead and then they would pass it off to an advisor or somebody like that, and then they would be done. That's not really the way that marketing is working, particularly in an optimized environment at this point. So we're really looking at marketing being a data-driven engagement, and really the ideal scenario, what we really want to get to is marketing that is being driven based on data for actual enrollments and student completion. So if we can tie an advertising campaign or a marketing effort or a downloadable asset all the way to how it's impacting that student, and every way that we're touching that student, whether that's moving them further towards enrollment in a program or completion of a program, that's really where we see marketing at this point is being driven by that actual content. This really started when we got into digital marketing and we were doing online advertising, and we could see not only who was clicking on the ads, but also were those clicks turning into conversions. We've been able to really move that further down the funnel, and we're continuing to see that that tie back further along, and marketing's engagement as a result stays more engaged with the prospective student and with that process for a much longer period of time. We also see with the proliferation of cell phones and instant data, a lot more self-service at this point, and an expectation of instant engagement. So what we mean by that is prospective students are spending more time on websites or different sources of information where they are doing the research themselves before they reach out to the schools to consider moving towards the next step. So they've gotten a certain amount of data before they start that conversation. Now, when they do start that conversation, they expect instant engagement with that. So one thing that we see is that there's really a speed to lead aspect to this. So if a student reaches out and says, I am very interested in talking to you about this program, that means they've likely done a pretty fair amount of research already, and that they want to talk to you, and more than likely they want to talk to you now, not 24 hours from now, not 3 days from now. They want to start that conversation pretty much instantly. And then the last thing that we're seeing is a lot more personalization and automation, which is leading to mass customization. So very rapidly, we can serve different students, different messages based on either behavior that they have taken or things that we know about them demographically, websites that they've visited, links that they've clicked, emails that they've been interested in, and we're able to really personalize that experience to them based on this information. So this is a bit more of what the modern life cycle looks like. You notice I don't have the traditional marketing funnel even pictured here anymore. We really see that these students are anonymous shoppers on our websites for a while. Then eventually they become known to us, and then they engage with us, and then they're going to go through a period of cycles here. So they might decide not to enroll for multiple semesters in a row, and we're going to have to recycle them and kick them back into the cycle and try to move them along. And again, our goal here is to measure the engagement with the different marketing pieces or the different conversations that we're having with them to see what's helping us move them towards an enrollment. All right, let's look at the current state of higher education as we see it today. We know that it's highly competitive. There are 4,000 schools that are out there that are competing for these students. They have lots of options, particularly when we're talking about post-traditional students where they are looking for online programs. There are now, where it used to be maybe 3 or 4 or 5 very large players, particularly in the nonprofit or the for-profit side, whichever way they wanted to go. There were a limited number of options that were viable options for them, particularly those students that were working. In the past, we had seen adult students get pushed into night school. That's no longer the issue, and there's really a blurring of the lines there. At the same time, where there's a lot more programs that are available, we're seeing a rapid decline in population that's just now starting to impact higher education and will impact us for the next at least 6 to 7 years and likely beyond that. And then finally, we see this need or this desire for a non-traditional pathway. So students aren't going straight from high school to college, a 4-year residential experience, and then into the workforce. Many of them may either start school or postpone school while they get their career started, they do some work, and then they're coming back to school as older adults. So let's quickly look at what that diminishing population looks like. This is the United States births by year from 2003 to 2017. And you can see that it's dropped very significantly over the course of the last 15 years. And as you look at the Great Recession from 2007, right prior to the Great Recession, all the way up through 2012, 2013, those numbers were on a very steep decline. And as you do the math, you realize that those students are going to be hitting our shores, if you will, in higher education within the next 10 years, in fewer than 10 years. So this is really what we're looking at when we're thinking about how are we going to separate our engagement with those students so that we can engage with those individuals that are most likely to get in. And what we're going to be talking about as we move forward here is what is it that those students want to talk about and what's driving their decisions. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Matt.
Okay, thanks. And I think you really encapsulated that well. One of the things I wanted to touch on just before we kind of dive into all of this is just this movement toward mass personalization and mass customization. One of the biggest things we hear from students that we're working with, either on the prospective or enrolled side, is they want to have a conversation and they want it to be about them. And this is a generation that's really grown up. And even for the post-traditional students who might be a little bit older, are really used to their digital experiences and all their experience being tailored to them. And that kind of movement toward this mass customization, everything being tailored to exactly what they want in the moment, is really what we've been hearing. So I just wanted to echo that before we dive into this. And really what we're talking about kind of leads into this is there's now a bigger need for increased complexity during the nurturing process. What we hear, and really where we started moving into the enrollment side of things, we had started on the student side, was schools were telling us, and prospective students were saying, I want the conversation to be about me. If you outbound a message to the prospective student saying, hey, we have a great school, you're going to love our programs, you haven't really engaged them in a conversation. And so when we think about this increased complexity in nurturing, what it's really moving toward is trying to get the student into this conversation of tell us about you. And then we're going to have this conversation about why our school is going to help you accomplish your needs and how this program is going to help you get onto your career path. And that involves a great deal more content. It requires a better understanding of the individual. So at some point during this inquiry process, we have to try and gather more data than we've been generally gathering about prospective students. And this kind of all leads to the schools that are able to help the student understand why they're going to help them accomplish their goals are the ones that are seeing increased enrollments versus the schools that are continuing with the same old approaches. And to touch on this quote here, which had come from the Education Dynamics report, the biggest thing we're seeing is that post-traditional students now are 75% of prospective students, but they have the highest needs around what they're looking for during the enrollment process. So if you're not figuring out how to market to them well, if you're not really getting to this personalization, you're going to miss the boat on what's becoming pretty much the increasing student body. So when we kind of dive into this, who are these post-traditional students and why is understanding how to market to them so important? And post-traditional students live off campus, they're older than 24, but when we really think about what makes them up is they're really thinking about careers. They're working professionals, and the reason they want to go back to school has something to do with career. We're going to actually get into the data about that in just a second. And then we should really talk about what the post-traditional student cares about. And number one on the list, what we always hear is the value for their investment. Because school to them is not just necessarily the next thing they're going to do. It is an investment in their life. And they want to understand, if I go to this school, I get that I get a degree, but how is that degree going to help me earn more? And that's really where career data is becoming a much more important part of the enrollment process. Because if you're going to make an argument for value, you have to show the student how this is going to change their earning potential upon graduation. So based on where they're located and what jobs are available to them and how those jobs pay and how those jobs view the certificates you're providing, how does that all lead to value? Because the students are less and less valuing the idea of the actual certificate versus what that certificate is going to do for them. And so really trying to communicate to them based on the certificate or the degree they want, what that value is going to be, is becoming really one of the key areas in this personalization. And so to get into this, why is focusing on the career so important? And the reason is because the primary motivation for students to go back to school is really centered around career. So when we look at this chart, at first glance, you're like, oh, but there are all these categories. And then you find out really most of these categories turn out to be about career. With 29% thinking about transitioning to a new career, and then really just this one gap here with the 22% thinking it's almost an obligatory step after. But with all the subsequent fields here, searching for a promotion, unemployment, and need for more education, and then returning to the job market and needing this upskilling. What this actually kind of yields down to is 66% of post-traditional students said they're going to enroll in school for some career reason. But if we can't reach them with that career message, then we're really missing the boat, because that's why they want to go back to school. They want to understand how they're going to do this. And interestingly, we work with a number of traditional schools as well, where all of their students don't necessarily look like this. And this seems to be a trend there, because the same kind of demographics that make up the post-traditional students are making up the demographics of traditional students' parents that are really forcing the college decision-making process. And those parents want to understand how their degrees are going to affect students' careers and what the ROI on that degree is going to be, and is the debt really worth it? This all comes with one big catch, though, something that we really concentrate on. If all of these students want to come to school so they can help their careers, why can't we just tell them what career they could get and how much they're going to earn? And the problem is 50% of these students actually don't know what they want. And even for those who say they do, they really could use either more clarity on what they want or some amount of additional kind of check to make sure they're actually right about these degrees. So you have these students who are looking for a new career, but they aren't exactly sure what that career is. And when we think about it, that is an enrollment person's opportunity, because they have the opportunity to say, instead of telling you why our school is great, we're going to take this moment to say, what do you want to accomplish? And we're going to invite you into this conversation. We're going to personalize this entire experience and say, based on what you want to accomplish, how we're going to help you understand better what you want to accomplish, we think this program will make sense for you. And then based on that program, we think you can lead to this career. And that career is going to pay this much in your area, which means this is the value for your degree. And so your messaging becomes all of a sudden personalized down to the student, all based around career, based on their goals. Instead of saying, hey, you should come to our school because we have great programs. It's a different conversation. It's this opportunity to really differentiate yourself from your competition. And when we are kind of thinking about how do you have this conversation, we think about all the things you want to kind of bring in to this student's vision of the world, the story you want to tell the student. And so what we know students want to know is they want to know what degrees you're going to offer. Are they interested in it? Do you have the right credentials? Can they afford it? Is all of this valuable? Is this going to net out to some career return that makes sense for them? And of course, how does financial aid work and how are you going to support them? So when we think about these personalized campaigns that we really see schools wanting to run, it's how do you get all of this information in front of a student and really distilled into one concrete picture? That leads down to providing a vision. So we generally think the best way to start this personalized campaigns with students is to deliver degree and career suggestions. So instead of going out and trying to tell them why the school is great, let's just open it up and say, here are the degrees that are going to make sense for you, and here are the career suggestions. And this is really great because to get those suggestions out, you're going to have an opportunity to gather more data about your prospective students that you can then use to really personalize their message back. So it's more of a feedback loop or more of a circle versus more of a pushing out the message. And when we think about providing this vision, it's all about aligning students to degrees they'll love. And the reason this is so important is because 25 to 30% of academic performance is based on interest alone. So in kind of a more broad sense, helping the prospective student understand what degree they're going to like the most ends up being a retention effort because the students that you help get into the right degree programs are more likely to retain. And then it's even more so if they understand how those degree programs relate to careers. So as an enrollment office, you can actually sort of double down on a strategy where you can increase prospective student yield by incorporating career and degree suggestions into your process and also help the school retain more students along that path. And ideally, if you're able to do all of this, you're reducing friction in the decision-making process, but even more importantly, you're emotionally connecting with the student. When a student, and when we see this when we're on campuses with schools, understands their career path, there's this moment that's kind of emotional. Like we always talk about one of the prospective students we saw sit back in her chair and just take a deep breath, and she says, I feel so much better about taking on this student debt. Because when you're able to provide this vision for students, you all of a sudden be able to take this career data and all this degree data and all of these things and turn it into a story about them, a story they can believe in. And you've connected emotionally with them. And now it's so much easier for them to make this massive purchasing decision because they believe in it. And they believe in it for them. And so this really all culminates into provide clear career outcomes. Instead of really focusing on the degrees, let's really get down to how the degrees are going to matter once they leave. And so we always think about kind of one really important tactic is getting data on individual careers onto degree pages. So all of your degrees are related to career at the front. And even better, if you know what degrees your students are interested in, market the careers that they're going to get to them, because you really want to market the end here, using that career data to tell the story of why the degree matters instead of telling a story about the degree. And then this really all leads down to what do students want to know about careers? And this is something we've actually learned through experience. When we started off, we didn't do these next two things, which was showing career paths or promotion opportunities. And what we learned was students wanted a visual representation or some sort of snapshot of what a career looked like. And what they really wanted to understand was if they made a decision, and we always said comparing medical research scientists to being a doctor, how do all these education steps and experience steps and promotion tracks and earnings possibilities all match up? So being able to show a student who might be interested in cybersecurity how they're going to move from 60 to 80 to $100,000 over their career path and what those promotion opportunities look like is just such an important step for them. And now that we kind of understand why it's so important to kind of tell these stories to students and get this career data in front of them, I'm going to hand it back to Eric to talk about, once you are starting to do this, how can you actually effectively get these messages in front of students? But before I do that, I do just want to share one last bit, which is kind of fun, which is our top career matches. And this is actually an interesting study that is kind of fun to talk about. When exclusively matching for interest, these are our top careers. Our platform matches also for earning possibilities, and so that greatly changes this. But when given the opportunity to just do whatever they want, we're seeing just increasing interest in helping other people. So that's why counselors and career advisors and mental health counselors all are coming up top, because people are really, what we find, having this urge to help other people in their day-to-day lives. Once you add in earning potential, these do change a great deal, but it's worth talking about. And very similar on the degree side, where psychology is our top degree by far, and then you're getting things like environmental studies and sales and marketing. But with that last tidbit, I'm now going to hand it over to Eric to talk about how do you practically take this information and move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. So the big thing that we really try to focus on is we want to have a student-centric path, and we want the information to be clear and easily digestible for them. So what do we mean by student-centric and easily digestible? There are some content aspects that students crave, and that's really sort of what we've been talking about here is they want that program information, they want job profile information, they want to know what their ROI is going to be, and they want to know how they're going to complete that program, what that path to completion is going to look like, how long is it going to take, how many classes are they going to be taking. Those types of things are the degree type program information that they want, particularly once they've got those first three segments covered. So let's talk a little bit about how we can potentially customize this modern life cycle for students and think about things like recycling people who have been lost or engaging either known or unknown prospects for us. So there are three different primary places where we are going to potentially try to customize our conversations with the students. And I'm going to take them in reverse order here. The first that we're going to talk about will be email marketing. The second is going to be our conversations with the students. And then the third is going to be our websites. In reality, that usually works backwards, right? Most students are going to be looking at our website and shopping us on our website before they ever get to a conversation. And that conversation may wax and wane over a period of time, and we're going to try to nurture them with some emails. But there's some very specific things that we can look at with email probably being the easiest one for us to manage and engage. This is a click from one of the marketing automation tools that we use, which is Marketo. I'm not going to talk much about the marketing automation, but do want to show how we are using it or how you might want to consider using it to provide behavioral-based engagement with the students. So we send them a series of emails, and these email may be we may segment these emails by email about career, email about work-life balance, different things like that, financial aid. All right. So in this instance, if a student clicks on multiple emails that are about the potential career path that they're going to take, then what we're going to do is we're going to create a task for the advisor, and we're going to say, hey, this person really wants to talk about their career path. So we're going to create that task, and you need to reach out to them within the next day here to let them know, to see if they have any additional questions about that career path. They've clicked on multiple emails. This is clearly an area of interest about them. So let's have that conversation with them about the topic that they want to talk about. We can also do this in this instance. These people have started an application in process and they're clicking on it, but they haven't yet finished that application. So we're going to get in touch with them and see if there's a roadblock that we can help them overcome to get that application completed. So this is one way that we are customizing emails. Another way that we're doing it is we have multiple streams that students will potentially go through in our nurture campaigns. So everyone's going to go through stream 1 and then stream 2. And that's a fairly standard drip nurture campaign, like many of you are probably running right now, where every week or every couple of days, we're sending out an email to these people. Well, we want to take that to the next step, and we want to transition them into series of emails or streams of emails based on what they're actually engaging on. So again, when I said we were creating calls based on their clicks, we can now also create additional streams in their nurture campaigns if they engage with emails about financial aid, or if someone goes to the financial aid page, we're going to then send them through the financial aid stream, provide them with additional information specifically about financial aid emails before we send them over to the more general nurture campaign. And we're using that general stream with many different topics to identify what it is that that student wants to communicate. Another example might be if we know that it's a program that's serving a lot of working professionals, they're likely to be concerned about things like work-life balance. So we're going to give them a series of tools in an email series if they indicate that work-life balance is something that they want to talk about. We don't want to send work-life balance emails, a series of 4 or 5 emails to a student that might not be working. So we're only going to put them in that stream if they indicate that they have that desire. So if someone indicates that we have another program that has 4 or 5 different specializations within a master's degree that's going to focus on the type of investigations that they're going to be doing, for example. So we can set up a nurture campaign that's going to provide them with information about their cybersecurity as opposed to financial investigations or something like that, where we can control the information that they're seeing. We don't need to provide that financial fraud investigation series of emails to someone that's clearly identified that they want to talk about a career that's specific to them in cybersecurity. So those are a few of the ways that we are engaging with nurturing programs and emails and customizing them to talk to them about their journey and specifically about their career paths, what that's going to look like. The next section that I have here is how we and how Matt actually also is engaging the student with information about their specific career path. So the first thing that we're doing is this is a case actually that something that I think that Awato does very well is publishing that degree information that's talking about after finding out that this is an interest that they have, giving them a very brief overview of different things. It's going to talk about what's their path to completion look like, what's their cost going to look like, what's a brief summary for them. This isn't replacing your site. It's just providing information about that, and you may get them to this site based on their career interests. And they say, I have an interest in computer and IT. Okay, well, here's a master's program that might be a good fit for you. So first, we've got the degree information. The second thing that we're going to share, as we talked about, would be job profiles. So not only what's the title of the job, but additional things and what industries do these people work on, but specifically, what's a day in the life look like for this person, right? These are the things that are really important. You said you're interested in this. Do you really know what that means? Do you know what this individual is going to be doing? Now, particularly with post-traditional students and with graduate programs, it's more likely that they might know what the day in the life looks like, but having this overview here that's going to talk to them about what the job is, and then also supplementing that with some core skills. The thing that's great about having the core skills on there is you can then tie that into how you're going to help them develop those skills so that they can be more successful in this career of choice. And then finally here, we're going to talk about the return on investment. This is something I think traditionally that schools have been a little bit less likely to talk about as you know, we all have our financial aid pages and our tuition pages and so forth, but really not just tying it to what's this going to cost me, but then looking at this is going to be what it's going to cost, but this is the potential return here in terms of your salary based on a series of job profiles that we've identified here, so that you can see, here's the salary range, here's what you're going to get out of it. Students are increasingly looking at this as an investment. And so with that, they want to know not only what the costs are, but what the returns are going to be. So having this communication of the return on investment is very valuable to them. So as we look at, to kind of wrap this all up, as we look at aligning this journey for the students, as Matt said, we can start that conversation very early on about what's that career look like. We know that that's what is driving them, is in many cases is the career and the job opportunities for them. So when we're in the awareness and the lead generation stage, we're going to communicate career data, particularly on our web, as we saw, but also we're going to communicate that in our ads, and specifically and importantly in our ad imagery and in our website imagery. So the images that we use may be more likely to show the aspirational outcomes for the people, so that they can envision themselves in that program and in that ad getting to that final step there. We're going to create ad content that communicates the career and less about the program. So it's going to communicate how it may help them get to the career that they desire, and specifically be tied to careers. And then finally, we're going to deliver targeted ads. So one way that you might do this is create a retargeting campaign for people that visit a specific career page on your website. You might then serve them display ads or Facebook ads that talk specifically about that career, that's targeted to them specifically based on the behavior that they've taken on your site as you're trying to generate them and convert them from an unknown shopper to a lead. So the next step then that we're going to go is, once we've engaged them initially and we've gotten into the nurturing campaign process, how are we going to nurture that individual? The first thing that we're going to do, as we talked about, is we're going to segment our list down, and we're going to deliver them dynamic content that is specific to them and unique to them. So this gets into that automation and mass customization that we're able to do, where we can say, not only do we know that you want to come for a grad program, we're only going to serve you information about this specific grad program. And also, you've identified that you have a specific career in mind. So we're going to, when we send an email about careers for those of you who are looking at investigations for white collar crimes, we're going to serve you this email. That exact same email for somebody else that has a cybersecurity interest is going to get a slightly different email with a little bit different wording that's going to focus on their career outcomes. And then interestingly and importantly is aligning your scripts and your communication in person, be that one-to-one email, be that texting or by phone calls and conversations. Make sure that those conversations are really aligned with the career content as well. So if we're serving them email that are about the career and about their career path and so forth, and we're calling them up and trying to sell them based on the fact that we've got ducks in our pond or different things that might appeal to a different type of student, that's not going to necessarily align your communication with your marketing. So it's important to make sure that those two elements are combined there. And then finally, building more marketing assets, deliverables, downloadables, infographics, things like that, that are career focused and that are highly targeted to those individuals. It does take a little bit more time to create multiple different versions, but maybe you have a application checklist that helps them build in the timeline that's going to help them get the information that they need to finish the application by the application deadline. Or maybe they're going to need help building their professional resume and turning that into something that will be applicable to an academic environment. You can provide those assets to them that would help them specifically. And then finally, taking this journey all the way through enrollment and graduation, and not just ending at the application process or at the enrollment process, but really using this to help them continue to confirm their path and their career aspirations. Over a 2-year period or a 3 or a 4-year period of college, their career aspirations may change, their interests may change. So it's important to make sure that we go back and we ask those students, are these still the things that are of value to you? Not just in their life, but in their interests and in their career path and so forth. They might have changed jobs. Does this career path still make sense for you? Does this education path still make sense to you? If not, let's adjust and pivot and not just have the student drop out, but let's make sure that we make the most of that for them and that they get the most out of that investment that they've already made. And then also with that, regularly reminding the students of what their goals were when they started or what their goals currently are. So re-communicating to them, these are the things that are happening in the industry. These are the advancements and the changes that are happening. These are the career trends that are happening within the industry that you're going into. And then finally, something that we've found that is really increasingly important to post-traditional students is that ongoing continued connection with the university, that they expect there to be an ongoing engagement. And over 50% of working professionals believe that ongoing continuing education is essential to their advancement. And another third think that it's somewhat important. So even after these students graduate and complete their programs, they're looking to their universities, who they now have a connection with, to continue that. So providing that and showing that during the enrollment process and after graduation is a good way to make sure that those students not only engage you, but then also are advocates for your program and so forth in the workplace where they are. So with that, we're going to wrap up. We do have a couple of additional resources. Happy to stick around and take questions if anyone has any questions. Again, we do have a couple of ebooks. There's a digital marketing playbook that's very helpful that you could certainly download from our website. That will be linked on the page that has the recording, as well as some of the reports that we reference in here. And again, if you're interested in taking us up on the offer on the free secret shopper assessment, I'll open that poll now, and we would be happy to get that started for you. So the poll is open there. If there are any questions, I'm sure Matt and I will be happy to stick around and answer those questions for you.